In round 6, with the 216th overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers addressing the linebacking spot with Dee Winters out of TCU after TCU made a marvelous run all the way to the national championship before getting dusted by Georgia. I like the pick of Dee Winters, and I'm going to tell you why coming up on today's show, which is all presented by Manscaped as our NFL draft coverage continues. It wouldn't be possible without Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products. And it's the leader in giving you a great deal, right? 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/49ers. Make sure you use the promo code 49ers for that deal to apply. So it's Dee Winters of San Francisco here. And as we've been talking about on the show, a lot of traction, a lot of buzz that we've been talking about San Francisco being interested in a linebacker here. And it makes some sense, right? Fred Warner is the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL. Dre Greenlaw, I thought, had an all-pro caliber season this past year. But you lost Azeez Al-Shaair. I know that San Francisco is somewhat high on Marcelino McCrary-Ball. That's why they brought him back. He had that interception last year in the preseason against the Green Bay Packers. For him as a player, played DB at Indiana, made the switch to linebacker, and oftentimes San Francisco puts a lot of stock and value in some of these linebackers who played previous positions in their lifetime. And that's what Dee Winters is. Some interesting background on him. The Niners love versatile athletes, and that's what Winters is, right? He was a 4-year varsity letterman and a two-way player in high school, lining up at running back, wide receiver, and then on defense, linebacker, cornerback, safety. And he also punted for his high school team, which had 27 students in his graduating class. So he grew up in Brenham, Texas, which is between Houston and Austin. And he ends up going to TCU, where he had a really good career. Good size and athleticism at 5'11", 227 pounds. Probably needs to add a little bit of bulk to his frame, but that's what the Niners do best with some of their developmental linebacker prospects. Nice run and chase ability because of that size and speed. With jump in blitzing results in 2022, which we're about to uncover, arguably had his best game in the college football semifinal. And some of the scouts that I talked to when he had that game against Michigan had said, look, not sure if he was going to get drafted, but after that game in that big spot against the opponent in Michigan, he's probably going to be a late round pick. That's where he goes here, round 6, 216 to the Niners. Not great playing in reverse, gets beat too much in coverage as a passing linebacker, but this is a guy who you can hopefully mold into a solid player. Again, I think that the starting linebacking core is going to be Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Marcelino McCrary-Ball. Dee Winters, though, gives you some insurance as a backup linebacker, and hopefully he can play special teams from the get-go so you get an immediate impact player from day one. He was a 3-star recruit in high school, the number 38 athlete in the 2019 recruiting class, number 90 recruit in Texas. And consider that in Texas, it might be the best football-rich state in the United States of America, despite playing in a lower classification at the 2A level. That's why he had that low graduation class. He put himself on the recruiting radar as a sophomore and started to receive FBS offers in his junior season. SMU was his first offer, followed by Houston, Northwestern, UTSA. But then he gets that offer from TCU, ends up going there, and he balled out for a team that made that aforementioned run to the national championship. Do you like the pick? Why for yes and for no? I got to be honest. Up to this point for San Francisco, I'd give them about a B- or a C grade. I actually happen to like this pick of Dee Winters here. Late in the 6th round, you get some good value here, and hopefully he can play special teams for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. What I also like about Dee Winters is how much he has been able to play over time. He comes to TCU, and in 2019 as a freshman, he played 11 games, had 4.5 tackles for loss, 28 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pass breakup. And then in 2020 as a sophomore, he becomes a full-time starter. He played in 10 games. He started all 10 of them. 65 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss. So what's the theme here so far is that he can be active in the backfield with 2 more sacks. So 4 sacks through his first 2 years. 2021 as a junior. The tackles continue to increase from 65 to 74, 5 tackles for loss. That went down. Sacks went down to 1. But then in 2022, this is when he really came onto the radar. Then he played really well against Michigan in the college football semifinal and was a first-team All-Big 12 player, led the Horned Frogs in tackles for loss, the Fiesta Bowl defensive MVP, and if you remember, a 29-yard interception return for a touchdown. And like some of the players who we've been talking about today, good character, team captain last year, 14.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups, and that lone interception. Throughout his career, 48 games played, 36 starts with TCU, and this is what the Athletics' Dane Brugler had to say about him as a prospect. Winters will run himself out of plays, meaning he sometimes over-pursues because of that speed. Pre-draft testing numbers, 4.49 40-yard dash. Solid for that linebacking spot, right? He can be engulfed in tight quarters, but he is in perpetual chase mode and covers a lot of green because of that speed, and he's a hustler, man. He doesn't give up on any plays. That's what Steve Wilks and the Niners organization really like about some of these defensive players. He is a run-and-hit linebacker prospect with special teams abilities. What did I just say, Trace? Special team abilities. And that's what he can bring to this team in year 1. More on him coming up, but first, today's show is presented by Manscaped. He runs around, does Winters like his balls are on fire. And if your balls are on fire, take care of it with Manscaped, right? The leader in below-the-waist men's grooming products, but also they now have beard products as well as they increase their arsenal. Winters, versatile. So too is Manscaped. You can get the Lawnmower 4.0, which can shave away all of your hair below the waist, because nobody wants that George W. Bush, right? But also, they have their beard products too, where you can trim up your beard. You can shape your beard. They have beard products to have it looking really, really good, and you can beard like a pro. You know who's a pro? George Kittle. He has some facial hair and some good hair on the top of his skull. He could use some Manscaped. I got to be honest. The Beard Hedger, brand new. Use the code 49ers at manscaped.com/49ers. Manscaped has launched new beard products. Growing a legendary beard just got easier with Manscaped. It's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/49ers. We'll put that link in the comment section and in the description of this video. It's manscaped.com/49ers. For Winters here, an above average play speed and testing speed. Those testing numbers, 4.49 40-yard dash like I said, and did do the shuttle, did do the 3-cone or the bench. The bench press was his choice, but because he's a little bit slighter at 227 pounds at the combine, then he added 3 pounds at his pro day. It's probably why he didn't do that, because he didn't want to take his draft stock. You look at the combine readable numbers here. You can see it here to my right. And I think that one of his strengths, he can really move his hips really well when having to shift back in coverage, but also make some plays on the ball carrier. And he can unlock those hips for fast angles, works downhill to make plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. This is a guy who can make tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He led the team in tackles for loss back in 2022 this past year, and he flies around the field, never shuts it down earlier. So some of the things that I talked about, high motor, speed, guy that can range sideline to sideline. You have a need for linebacker and to at least develop a younger player behind Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, both of whom are under contract for the next couple of years. What better linebackers to learn from, right? Than a guy like Fred Warner, who's the best off-ball linebacker in the sport. And Fred Warner's probably like, yo, Dee Winters, I saw you on tape. You're a solid player. I like how you play like your balls are on fire, like Manscaped, right? But you can add a little bit of bulk to that frame, and then you can become a more impactful player as you add a little bit more physicality to your game. As for the weaknesses, undersized frame, lacks the ideal arm length, but sometimes people make too much of a deal about arm length. Can you tackle or not? Do you put in effort or not? Are you fast or not? Are you afraid to be physical or not? If you have short arms, does that mean that you can't tackle? Now, if you're leaping for somebody, it can affect you a little bit. If you're trying to disengage from blockers, it can affect you to a certain degree, right? But for that to be a weakness, according to Dane Brugler, a little bit too much in my estimation. He could be late to sort through traffic, leaving him sealed or walled off, prematurely attacks blocks and takes himself out of the play. But I think he does that because he's aggressive. And what Steve Wilks can teach him, what Fred Warner can teach him, I believe, is the diagnosing skills which allows the game to slow down for him to a certain degree. Make sure you subscribe to the show if you want daily videos on the San Francisco 49ers. Subscribe and join the squad. If you're a diehard Niner fan, we will not disappoint you with our coverage. It's the San Francisco 49ers Report by Chat Sports, north of 80,000 subscribers. We give you shows every single day. Best players available here with the Niners, still with some picks here on the table, still some money to get after. Corey Trice, cornerback out of Purdue. Avon Pace, linebacker out of Cincinnati. Ivan Pace. Emil Ekiyor, the offensive guard out of Alabama. Moro Ojomo, a guy who producer Coop likes, who you heard from last night. Ryan Hayes, Moro Ojomo tested well in the pre-draft process. Ryan Hayes, he continues to fall down draft boards. Something tells me that athletically there might be a red flag there, because I thought he could have been mid-round pick, third round, fourth round, fifth round. Here he is still available in round 6. John Ojuwuku, offensive tackle out of Boise State. Jake Witt out of NMU. And then Earl Bostic, offensive tackle out of Kansas. Look, we keep showing you top offensive tackles available because we keep waiting for the 49ers to draft an offensive tackle, and they continue to neglect that position. It doesn't make sense to me. It is organizational malpractice. I believe that you build your team inside out. Offensive line, defensive line, then of course you have to get your quarterback, of course. That's priority number 1. But what is going on here? Don't understand it. Hopefully the Niners get a right tackle at some point in this draft.